It's Saturday, December 30th, and welcome to my shop. This is going to be a fun day today. I've got a bunch of little projects I want to tackle, but you see I've got old Fritz here up on the lift. This is the first time this car's been up in the air, and I'm going to be able to get underneath and take a really close look, because if any of you have dealt with these Euro models before, you know one of the #1 issues is rust on these cars, because they were in Europe, they were in Germany, they got subject to road salt, and it doesn't take much. But we're going to see how well Fritz fared by getting imported into the U.S., hopefully before it got too much salt buried up in the underbody and chassis. We also have a visitor today, a little station wagon we're going to be talking about more a little bit later in this video. And then I've got some other miscellaneous projects going on, but I want to take you outside right now and show you the Hawk. Take a look at that wax job we put on that car. Isn't that beautiful? And I've discovered after using hundreds of different types of waxes, there's only one thing that's going to give a car a shine like that, and that's acrylic works. If you want to know more about this product, I'll just put a link in the show more part of the description below. You know, in the past I've done little clips on my favorite tool of the week. It's just kind of highlighting things I use around the shop here. But I have a tool that I just finished using on Fritz that really is one of my all-time favorites. Take a look at this. Have you ever seen one? You've probably never seen one in this bad a shape. I think this is 20 years old. It was funny, the other day I was actually looking online to see if they still make this hammer. But this is a very unique hammer, and you can't believe how many times I've used it. Take a look. It's obvious you can see how many times I've used it. But this is a 2-pound hammer. On this end it has copper, and on this end it has rawhide. So this copper end is great for banging on any kind of metal parts that you don't want to mar or nick. And then of course the rawhide end is for hammering on things that you don't want to create big dents in. So take a look at now how I went to town on the trunk in old Fritz here with this beautiful hammer. But this one over here, it's tough because it's really stretched the metal right in here. Let's see if I can wrap it right along this edge and to get this one to pop back down. Not bad. It's a lot better. Now I've got a little bow right in here, so I'm going to have to come back in and hit along the edge. Notice I'm staying right on the edge there. It's going to minimize some of the dents. Now I've got a spot here that's probably got an oil can. And when I really want to push it, I'll get my foot in here and hit it with your foot, because that'll really prevent getting extra dents in. Okay, I'll keep working on this, but it's getting a lot better. And when I'm all done, I'm going to come in and clean up these rust spots and coat these with Miracle Paint. And then I'll go ahead and spray the whole inside of this spare tire well with some nice satin black paint. So you can see why I love detailing. It's very creative. Well, as the old saying goes, look what the cat drug home this past week. You're saying, well, Ken, what are you doing with that car? Well, believe it or not, I've been looking for one of these for 4 years. That's right, 4 years. And it had to meet this criteria. Number one, it had to be a C240, 2003 to 2005. It had to be 4matic. It had to have silver paint and gray interior. And it had to have under 100,000 miles. So, you know, I've been kind of looking around. There's probably 3 reasons. One is people have been asking over the last 3 or 4 years, hey, Kent, when are you going to do something on the C-Class? People don't seem to realize that if I'm going to do videos on a car, I need to own it. I can't just go borrow somebody's car and say, well, look at this car, it's pretty cool. You have to kind of live with them. You have to kind of work on them and live with them to really learn about them. So what I'm going to be doing is use this car for a platform for a series of videos on the C-Class. the W203. Now the other reason is, this is what I wanted for a grandchildren hauler. You know, my wife Linda drives a smart car, but the problem is she can't hold the grandchildren. So I don't know what we're going to call this yet. Maybe just call it the kiddo wagon. But the third reason is, you know, and that has to do with that 4matic. I've been driving up into the mountains a lot lately, working on a project up there, and as some of you might know, and I decided if I'm going to get one of these, it had to be 4matic. Because just this past week, I was driving in the snow and ice, and I'm thinking, man, I'd love to be in a 4matic all-wheel drive Mercedes-Benz. I just love the way the 4matic handles. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today. You know, it's a really clean car. It has exactly 100,000 miles on it. And, you know, it's just really nice. I could find a few flaws here. In fact, today, we're going to fix two things real quick, maybe a half hour or less. I don't have a lot of time, but later in the week, I'm going to get this up on the lift, do a full inspection, change a lot of fluids, you know, change the fluids in the differentials, the transfer case, the brakes, and so on. I did get a lot of maintenance records with this. So when I start the series, I'm going to kind of add to that buying a 10 to 15-year-old Mercedes-Benz and look at this example here because I got some good maintenance records. I got a really nice garage kept car. And I'm going to show you some tricks on how you can determine if a car really has been garage kept. So I know today, Saturday, I won't be able to spend a lot more time on this car with you, but be looking for it in future videos. There's a couple things I want to fix right here, right now. It'll only take me 15 minutes. One for me, one for Linda. The first thing is, of course, the lift gate. You see this so often. I don't care what kind of a car, be a Japanese car, US car, German car. After about 10 years, these struts start losing their oomph. So you see, you bring it up to about here, you literally have to get over halfway, right? Okay, that's about halfway where it'll hold, and if it's cold outside, it won't even do that. So I've got to change these lift struts so it's not so hard to get this hatch open. And then the other thing is this carpet's kind of dirty. I mean, it's not real dirty. You look at this car, it's real clean. But there's some dirt spots in here. It wasn't really detailed before it was sold. So I'm going to tackle these dirt spots on this carpet with it. Well, there's the new ones. They're German made. I didn't go for the cheap aftermarket. Believe it or not, I'm looking at this. It's got the Mercedes star, Mercedes part number on it. So this is probably original, not bad for 15 years. I would recommend you spend a little extra money, particularly if you're going to keep the car, and get the quality replacements. Well, that took about 10 minutes. That's a pretty easy DIY job. Now let's see the difference. I'm going to just lift it up gently, and right about there it starts taking the weight off. Look at that. And then I get to about this position and it's going to open all the way. Isn't that great? Yeah, Linda's going to be happy, isn't she? Okay, just a little nudge and there she goes. Okay, that's the type of repairs I like to do on Saturday. Now let's take a look at this carpet. We've got a pretty dirty area right in here. So let's just spray this on. I'm going to take about a square foot here so we can see the difference. And then we'll just lightly scrub it with a brush. Whoa, look at that. Literally before my eyes, the spots are disappearing. Okay, now I got a super clean white cloth so we can just see how much dirt we're pulling out of that carpet. Now, a lot of cleaners leave the carpet kind of matted down, so this will be interesting how this looks after it dries as well. But look at that. It looks like somebody spilled coffee back here. So let's see, the time is 2:37. I'm going to tackle this and let's see how long it takes to finish this lower carpet here. Looking at the clock, it's 3:53, so that's about 16 minutes. And it was a workout, okay? For an old guy, I got huffing and puffing, scrubbing and wiping. But this carpet was really dirty, look at that. one rag both sides, and I even had to get the second one. So that's pretty amazing, considering the carpet didn't really look that bad. Now you can't really tell that well in the video, but this carpet is really clean. Take a look at what I'm going to have to play around with today in the shop. This is a manifold. No, it's not a car manifold. I'm sure some of you already know what this is, but I have to make some modifications to this. Now let me explain what this is, and I'll also explain why I'm working on it today. This is a manifold for hot water radiant floor heating. Now this is the heating system that I'm putting in the log cabin. So this past week I was up there routing PEX tubing and bringing it up to my other manifold. And you can see here I got to make sure I hook those tubes up to the right fittings. But I also wanted to make sure, you know, I'm Dutch, so I wanted to make sure all my tubes were straight on the floor. But what I have to do with this one is I have to reverse it. Normally they're mounted like this, the tubes come up from the bottom. This is a filler port and this is an air bleed. But I want to, for the main floor tubing, which is going to be a staple up under the subfloor inside the floor joist, I've got to have the tubes come in this way. Follow me? So we got a problem here. The air bleed is down. Well, that's not going to bleed the air, so I've got to take these two fittings off here, and reverse them. And they're really in there tight. They use a special sealant to make sure these don't work. But I'm sure some of you are wondering why I'm building this cabin. You know, it's obvious why it's taking me so long to get these cars done. But take a look here. This is the first building I built in 1973. And it was made out of little teeny logs. This was for my airplane hangar out in New Guinea, and I had to find some way so I could at least park the nose of the airplane under this little quote-unquote hangar so I could work on the engine. Well, here I am again building another building out of sticks, but they're a little bit bigger sticks. This has been a really challenging project because I am the general contractor. I am the working general contractor on this project. And this radiant floor heating is going to be a big challenge because we're doing all the floors with hot water tubing, so it'll be very warm and cozy. So here's your manifold. We're going to be modifying two of these today in the shop if I have time. You know, I think one of the most enjoyable parts of this hobby is when you get one of these old cars and you find some surprises. It's like unwrapping Christmas presents, okay? Well, look, I pulled the wheels off this thing, and look at that. Brand new rotor, and it looks like either a new or a rebuilt caliper. So that's kind of nice. I'm also looking underneath there. It looks like the fuel filter's been changed. And the most exciting surprise for me is how clean this car is underneath. Let me tell you, I don't think I've had a Euro model that's as clean as this one. So it's obvious this car didn't stay in Europe very long. Some of the rust I'm seeing is evidence of being exposed to road salt, but very little. Most of the rust you see up here in the Pacific Northwest, because we don't use road salt around here, is different. It's a different type of rust. It's not so vicious. It's not so flaky, not so deep. And usually when you get one of these Euro models up in the air and start looking around, you start seeing some really heavy pitting and a lot of the suspension parts that don't get, you know, good paint from the factory. But take a look underneath here. Look at how clean this is. There are some rust spots, granted, and I'm going to show you those in a minute, but just take a look underneath the car as I go from the rear up to the front. That's pretty amazing. And it's great when you start working on these, particularly the suspension parts, driveline parts, all those things. When you get a rust bucket that's been exposed to heavy road salt, it's just a pain to work on every time you do something. You know, you've got frozen bolts, broken bolts, and you know the routine. I'm sure some of you have been through that. So I'm very happy now, but now I want to show you, I'm going to do some probing, and we're going to check and see just how much rust is on old Fritz's body here. This is one of the first areas that I inspect on these old cars. It's because when this tire is spinning, it throws water, dirt, and road salt right down into this corner, and it gets stuck in here. You'll see rusting in and around this jack hole, and particularly right in this area and along the bottom underneath the body undercoating. So let's do some probing here. I can see already I've got some weak metal. Maybe it's just undercoating. Sometimes you'll pull the undercoating off and you won't have any holes. But look at this. This is why I don't like factory undercoating. it just traps the moisture. Look at that. Okay, that's not bad. That's pretty solid metal, but we have rust. This is a perfect candidate for a miracle paint treatment. So, yeah, it's stopping right about there. You go around the jack point. That doesn't look too bad. And right in here, let's peel this back. This is where you usually find a hole, right in here. See this? Get that body undercoating off. Yeah, sure enough. It didn't survive that. So there you see the hole right there. Look at that. So I'm not going to be able to say that old Fritz is rust-free, but I tell you, this is a perfect area to do the miracle paint and fiberglass cloth treatment I use. Trying to weld in this area is the pits. And you know, I'll get body men that'll argue with me, say, oh no, you need to cut that metal out and weld it. Well, you should see some of the jobs I've had to deal with when they've welded this metal in here and they haven't treated it. You can't get to the back side to treat the welds. And 5 years down the road, you have worse rust because somebody came in there and welded metal. Watch in a future video as I repair this, and I believe you're going to get a much more permanent repair doing it my way as opposed to trying to cut out and weld in a piece of metal. Now, this isn't structural. Don't get me wrong here. If this were a structural issue, you would have to weld in new metal. Let's go up front and see what we find up there. This is the right front jack point, and this is more typical of the type of rust you'll see if the metal's been exposed to road salt. You can see the real heavy pitting in there and the peeling back here. Once again, I'm going to peel this back as best I can, and then I'll get a punch, and I'm going to try to punch through this area to just see how weak it is. But, you know, we keep going this way. You'll be surprised at how much rust you'll find underneath this area here. Let me show you another spot. This is kind of a typical area on the W126 where this front panel bolts on the fender. You can see it's loose. I'm not going to pull this off because I guarantee you this is going to be really ugly in here due to road salt. It's going to be way beyond what you'd normally see. But if I pull this off, then I got to look at it until I fix it. So I know from experience we're going to see a lot of rust on this fender and some real weak attach points where this panel connects to it. So I'm leaving this alone. But let me show you something else on the front suspension. It's pretty clean, but there are a couple areas of concern. You're looking here at the brake control support rod on a W126. And this is a ball joint in here that typically wears out and you'll get clunking at low speed driving over rough ground. I would say that in 90% of the 126s I've purchased over the last 10 years, I've had to replace this. Well, it requires pulling this aluminum casting off, and there's two long bolts that go up into these big nut plates, and look at that, I'm seeing rust. And those can be a real bear to get out. So this may make a good video in the future, how I attack these, because this can become a huge, big wrench dance. So we're going to forget about this for now. I think you can tell I'm pretty happy with what I've discovered underneath Fritz. I mean, I've had a lot of European model Mercedes, and I like them. There's a number of things I really like about them. I like the simplicity of systems. I like the horsepower that the engines put out, and some other features like velour interior, but rust is the biggest downside. And I've had a couple where it just seems like the more you poke, the worse they get. But this is something, this is a nice car, and this is very fixable in the small amount of rust I've seen. I was hoping today to get further along on Fritz. I'm looking up at the clock over there, and it's 4:25, and so ends another Saturday. But I'm not going to get that done. I wanted to go underneath and get a clipboard and have you follow along as I made a complete list of everything I would want to fix or replace underneath old Fritz here. You know, we've got the shift bushings, obviously, one. We've got a hole in the muffler. And believe it or not, it's the type of hole I can fix with miracle paint and fiberglass cloth. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to last for 5 years. So right here is where all that ugly noise coming out of Fritz's exhaust originates. It's got a hole in the bottom of the center muffler. This is typical on these gas cars because they they get real dry in here and the condensation forms on the bottom of the muffler. The car sits and they rot through. The pipes are in good shape. The rear muffler is in good shape. The whole rest of this center muffler is very solid. It's just right here in this lower area. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this. I'm not even going to take it off the car, and this will give me some driving time on Fritz before I ever have to worry about replacing this muffler here. But I'll do a separate video later on and show you how I complete this repair. So we're going to wrap it up today. There's one more thing I want to do. On January 1 each year, I like to fly a model airplane. It's my polar flying event. It's pretty cold. I was going to go out and fly today, but it's so cold out there, man. But I'm going to pull out a couple model airplanes as I wrap this up, kind of make sure my batteries are charged, because on Monday, I'm going to go flying. All of you out there, have a little fun on Monday, and Happy New Year to all of you.